Almost, yep.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. Before I speak to you, my name is Ellie Kisyombe and I'm a native of Malawi. I moved here 8 years ago to seek asylum, and I found myself in a system called direct provision. So before I start saying, telling you my story and why I moved over here, I had a few words which I wrote for you guys. So I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible. Nothing will work unless you do something. So that's a little bit, these words gives me a little bit of encouragement of where I'm coming from and who I am and my future. I moved over here 8 years ago, as I've said. I'm coming from a generation of politicians. And I understand when I'm telling people that I'm from Malawi, a lot of people, they always ask me, like, there's never been war in Malawi. But I know that to be in my situation, to be a refugee or an asylum seeker, it's not only war that can threaten the person that they can be dead. I lost my parents and I lost also immediate family due to politics. And I understand when your life is threatened and when you make a decision of leaving a home, when a home feels like a mouth of shark, and the next decision you have to make is you have to leave. And sometimes more especially when there are even also kids involved, because you just want your children to grow in an environment whereby you want them to have best education, a good future, that every child has a basic human rights to that. So my parents did make that decision. They died in a situation of trying to save everyone, and I had to make that decision based on experience that I found myself. So it's when I found myself in Ireland. To be honest, it's funny that when I was moving over to Ireland, I didn't actually know about Ireland, but I was in Europe somewhere where I studied, and I went back home, and through that I was involved in activism, and being somebody that I've carried a political blood, and I think that's where I really wanted to focus, because I was an angry child at that time, not angry in a bad way, but angry because I lost people for what they believed, and I felt like I had the same principles, and I felt like I could maybe do better than the way they did. But I found that it was very hard for me to do better from my own motherland than me to move so that I can live, and maybe future will bring a change. So I moved over to Ireland, and I was talking to a few friends at that time, and people knew Ireland at that time. And at that time, the only benefit I had was every places I really wanted to go, I could get a visa to go there. So the visa process was taking a little bit longer because we were in a situation whereby we couldn't even look for visas at all. We just need to live so that we can live. So Ireland was one of those countries that I could come to Ireland without a visa and seek asylum. So that's exactly what I did. And I moved to Ireland, and I reached at the airport and I sought asylum. And when I sought asylum, I was, the situation, the process is a bit harder, but I was welcomed and I was accepted to seek asylum. But then I was taken into a system called direct provision. So from that day, that's the system that I lived till up to date. So when I went into direct provision, my actual sense was I'm going to be here and restart all over again, because I had lost a lot. I had lost everything. I had nothing. The only thing I had was the family, which my siblings and my children, because I had kids when I was young, and my kids were raised by my mom. So when my parents died, then that means I had to take the responsibility of having these kids again. So that's the only people I had. And every decision that I was making at that time was like thinking that I should keep my family together. So at that time, what I was thinking was, I've arrived here and then I'm going to be accepted, given asylum, and then I can bring over my kids so we can move on with family. And another thing that people might understand, refugees or asylum seekers, mainly we are people who we've just had the troubled past, but then there is a certain sense of life in us that we had things that we really wish to be in our lives and be able to contribute to the society where we found ourselves. So at that time it was really hard. And direct provision, it's a system which takes care of asylum seeker when they come in this country and seek the asylum, and while their cases are being processed. So you are there for like a day to 8 years, like the way I am, or to 10 years, like, the way I am. Many people who lived in this situation are people that we've gone through a lot of difficult situations, like trauma. We've seen death, we've seen a lot of traumatizing things, and being put in that situation, I think it's not helping at all. It's just make the situation worse and worse. So I had to bear that this is where I am. And for the first year of my living in direct provision, it was really hard because I was clinically diagnosed with depression. So I was in a bad place at that time, very, very bad place. And I had to be in that state and not knowing what to do. I had bad days that sometimes I really felt, as a human being, I really felt weak, and maybe even think of like taking life was the best thing I could do at that time. But then I felt like maybe it's a hard way to say, if I did this, I'll be selfish, because I have children and I have also family that they really relying on me. And it was really harder, but I had to go through that. But then I had also to understand where I was and how could I get out myself from that situation. It is a situation that I couldn't get out myself because there's nothing I can do. I'm there. But then, like, mentally, how can I do something to relieve out of this pressure? So at that time, I lived in direct provision, where I met a few friends, and these few friends, when I talked to them, at that time when I was arriving, they were saying, we've been here for like maybe 8 years. And these people mainly, they were living in a state whereby it's an open prison, where life is just like going to bed, wake up in the morning, you first served breakfast, you then served lunch, you then served dinner. And if you missed one of those, that means you've missed your day. And they get an allowance of 1910 euro a week, and kids were getting allowance of 960 a week. And you don't get third level education. You're not allowed to seek employment. And at that time, there were even not many like places that you could go and just relieve yourself mentally, or maybe to seek like advice, or maybe to talk to someone, or even other organizations other than Irish Refugee Council that could help you, like how can you further, or how can you integrate or settle in the community. So it was totally, it's small incarcerated really, that you are in a prison that you don't even know like how your sentence is going to run, and that's the life you can live. So through that, how difficult things are and how things were, and even thinking that I couldn't even provide for like my family, and that was killing me a lot. And I also had to find a way of how can I get by day to day. So in the hostels where I lived, I met a lot of refugees and asylum seekers from countries like Eritrea, Sudan, and other countries whereby English was a little bit difficult for them. And many of them, they didn't even know what to do with their lives. So I started helping out with my fellow asylum seekers, and like I think you can do a bit of English. And we had like some sisters. That time I was in Mayo, in Ballyhones, and I had sisters. Then I started asking her, can you not maybe help like to provide English classes to these like people and things like that. That was another way of like me trying to get through the situation which I was. And being that somebody that I am an activist, and I am someone who I had a little bit of knowledge of what was going on, and I used that to just relieve a few things. So I started, after doing that, after doing what I was doing, helping my fellow asylum seekers, I found myself in a situation whereby the system became more tense and harder for me, because now I become like a little bit of threat. So I was moved quite a lot from one house, and when I was about to settle, and I was moved again, and when I was about to settle, I was moved again, and that was like really, it was really hard. But in other sense of life, maybe it also really worked well, because I get to know many of my brothers and sisters from the refugee community, and I get to know like a lot of people. So yeah, I can say like that's how it was really well. But it was really hard. So through that, in 2011, I got a volunteer job with Irish Refugee Council, and that was part of like I had to get out and do something, and I created a lot of activities with my fellow asylum seekers. I was creating like a bit of gardens and things like that. But at the back of my mind, like my mentally, I wasn't like strong enough to do all of that, because the system can take everything out of you, and it's not even easy. And in every institution or every way you want to take as an asylum seeker, it's very, very hard, because like the way the government here, they've stated the way they are keeping us, it even makes harder for people in the community to understand that you actually left from where you're coming from, coming here through problems. There are many ways which people looked at. You're looked at like somebody, like an opportunist, or somebody who just want to come and use all the resources that are here. So there's a lot of hard situations. And then doing what I've been doing in 2015, I was doing other things, and in 2015 I met my supervisor at that time, my boss at that time. She met a lady who was a business lady, and then she approached her to say, okay, I'm a business lady and I do foodie, so I want to do something about direct provision, because I understand one thing I left to mention is like asylum seekers are not allowed to cook in wherever we are, because they live in hotels for like all this time, like 1 year to however time they're going to spend there. So they don't have spaces to cook, and they don't even have like, you're not allowed to work, so you can't have like a budget to go to the market and get your food. So she said, okay, I do food, and then I want to do something about cooking. So my boss was like, okay, there's somebody who, she's volunteering with us, and she's been doing a lot of stuff, and that's one of the things which she's been looking to do. So maybe if you guys, you can sit and have a chat. So we sit and have a chat, and then we had like a common interest, and I was like, yeah, I think I know a few things about this, and also I'm a great cook, so we can actually use that to start off this platform. So in 2015 we set up the project called Our Table, and the idea of Our Table, it came as a space whereby we wanted asylum seekers to be able to come out and have a space where they can call it their own, and also they can relate to the people who they are, because it's very hard that you've lived in a system for about 1 to 8 years and you've not even met people like you. So I was even getting scared now, because I have the world that I'm used to, like I've got the lefties that I'm used to. If I meet these people, I understand that these people can understand me a lot. And then people who are stuck in this system, sometimes self-esteem and confidence, you're taking all of this, and for you to actually meet people or to talk to people, it's something harder. And like issues of racism, I can speak from my own experience. Like I've experienced a lot of racism, but sometimes you just find a way of how can you deal with that. So like many people from asylum seekers, that's what they face. So that was the idea of Our Table, that people can come there and relate to the platform, that I think this is somewhere where I can be able to talk to people or to meet people, and also to help them that when they stay longer in direct provision, they can be able to get trained if they want maybe to move in hospitality. In the future, they can actually get a CV, or also they can get a work experience, and they can get actual training, a certificate that they can use it to get employment. And for the refugees who they've got their papers, they can actually get the internship. So at least they can keep a lot of money, because there is a lot of issues. If I can describe direct provision, I think I can do that for like 1 hour, because there's a lot of barriers that you can't go through. So we set up Our Table, and it's a campaign. The need is to highlight to end direct provision, because I believe that it's a system that is degrading people, and it's just dehumanizing human beings, and it's not fit for any purpose. You can just imagine a child who was born and grown up in direct provision, or a child, or like what he said, that if he was like here, that he didn't have a chance to go straight to Retrieve, so he was here like maybe 10 years or 9 years. You are already coming from a traumatizing situation, and then you arrive in a country whereby in that country you're going to find yourself in direct provision. So it's another like 10 or 8 years of shutdown of your life. So it's really hard. It's really hard. I don't know how I can describe things further, but it's a very difficult situation that in 20th century we find ourselves that we have refugee camps in Ireland that are treating people like the way things are, that many people are coming from other situations like Greece and, taking serious routes like from Mediterranean, crossing Mediterranean Sea, and then maybe thinking that, okay, I get to Ireland and I get better, and caught up in the same system again. And that's how I find. I think I've talked a lot, so I might be losing focus. So maybe when you give me questions, I'll be able to answer that. But anyway, that's how I find myself in Ireland, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you just speak a little bit about where you are now, because you're starting to appear in newspapers and different things, so you obviously your activism is continuing, but you're not in direct provision now?
I am still in direct provision. Yeah, I am still in direct provision. I don't like to say this, but sometimes I get hard for myself. I push quite a lot. It's not easy to be.
Can I just for 1 second? This is streaming, so if you want me to stop at any point, you can just say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's really hard to be Ellie Kisyombe and to be in direct provision, but then the way the system it is, it's also hard for me just to sit back and see the way things are going. Fortunately enough, I've been really lucky that through my activism and through my work, I integrated myself really well with just the positive mind I just put in my head, and I've connected so well in the Irish community that I've made friends that they've actually given me that love to push me through. They've supported me like 100%, and sometimes maybe some people, they might not see that, but that sometimes give me a courage to keep going, to say like, okay, the system can fail me, but I can't fail myself. So I just have to find a way to get through this. So where I am now is we set up a cafe in 2016 in Project Arts. So in 2017, I found myself in Cork, where Darina Allen invited me. So I spent 5 months with Darina Allen, where I did my culinary course. And then when I was coming back, unfortunately, some of the people who helped me to set up the project, they were not able to move on with me. Such a very difficult time that at that time, maybe that was the breaking point of me. But it also, I think, on the other hand, was also like the other part that made me actually to grow that I felt like this is my problem, and I think I have to carry it with dignity and nobility and find the way how I can survive in this, because I'm floating, I might drown or I might get out of the sea. So that's the decision I made at that time. So what I did was like, I was very well equipped when I was coming from Balemalu, because I had all the necessary tools. So that's what I did, focused. Sometimes people don't understand that, how have I managed it? And I've managed it just to take myself out and just to give myself out. And that's how we've done. Like even with the project, we've never get a chance of maybe being funded or do things like that. But through the connection, the way I've connected to people, I was able to go out and like volunteer to people and just ask them that I want this to carry on, and this is a campaign, and I don't want to stop highlighting these issues. I want these issues, and I want this project to be there. So I'm going to come and, I have my pots, I have my tools. I'll cook for you guys, support the project, and we keep going on. And my fellow asylum seekers, they believed in me. and they didn't leave me alone, and people were coming and volunteer. And also I had refugees who come and work with me. And like what I've said, that Irish people that also supported me quite well. And I had people who could help me, like do me just like a little bit of work, maybe if I need paperwork and stuff like that. And people would do me such things. And in 2017 again, another cancer, if you know Gary Gannon, also helped me to to do a little bit of fundraising. Like we set up pop-up Christmas dinners, so we raised a little bit of money. And in November we set up the company. Sorry. Sorry, yeah. So we set up a company again. Sorry. So I had to invite like some of the people who I knew that, can you guys come and help me out? So we were able to register the company again and become a company. So that's why we are working at the moment. And 2017, we are focusing in bringing back the cafe, which the Christchurch, they've given us a space to run the cafe. And yeah, I hope it goes well for us, but that's where we are at the moment.
And you know the way you got moved around a lot?
Yeah.
So you're kind of seen as a troublemaker?
Exactly.
So does that mean that you're also now being watched as a, you know, does this potentially I know it can help your case, yes, but it can also, like, is that a...
Yeah, you know, like, I think, let me tell you one thing. I'm in the most difficult time of my life that sometimes I don't know my fate, right? But I don't focus and think about that at the moment. Mm-hmm. Like now, I think I'm in some ways, I think now between all these situations, I've been able to find myself. This is truly who I am. I'm a fighter, and that's one thing who I am, and I think that's not just going to take it away from me at any time. So I did find that for myself. So what I said to myself is like, I have a case which is going on for 8 years. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's either I'm going to be allowed to stick around, or it's either I'm going to be booted off. But then I also know that if that time comes, and if that thing happens, I know where my fate will be, even if I can leave Ireland. But the only thing I can do now is just to play the moment. So to play the moment and to create the moment is actually to do the best and to give the best I can and love what I am doing, because actually what I'm doing now, I think it's like, I never saw that, but people that have been actually talking to me, like a lot of people that have been inspired with what I do, a lot of people that have had courage. When I was starting like 6, 7 years ago, when I was starting the campaign in a refugee world, there were not many like organizations which were helping. Today, actually this afternoon, I was actually speaking on another event whereby another university, they set up a scholarship for students. And that scholarship, I was one of the people who we pushed that scholarship to come for the students. So, you know, like through that, and now we have about 5, 6 universities in Ireland now that they're offering education to asylum seekers. So that's some of my achievements that I've really worked towards it. So for now, I think I've just forget about the case. I know my case is like, it has gone into personal, it has gone into political. I felt so at times, because even when I go for interviews, even when I got the letters, I see like, no, this is a different case. You know, people go there. I have things that I've proved that this is who I am, but it doesn't even make sense. And there is no way I can prove myself other than to this level. But then at the moment, I think I can just play this moment. I can just make a difference from where I am. Whatever happens next, whether it's a threat or whether it's a living, it's going to happen at that time. But at the end of the day, people in Ireland, they will never forget that Ellie Kisyombe was here, and I've lived in Ireland, and I think I've done what I can. Yeah.
Could you tell me about just the day in Ballyhonest, because it's one of the centres that we want to actually try and do a bit of work in. So just a typical day and what goes on.
The time I was in Ballyhonest, it was really, really hard. When I mean hard, like for me, I remember my first protest. I stayed two days outside Ballyhonest Centre, not even walking in. Because like Ballyhonest is a tiny village. And even where the hostels are, they are like up on the hill, and there is a grave side on the other hand. So we are behind. So we are not seen to the communities. And even the communities, they didn't actually understand what was going on in there. So in Ballyhonest, it was totally a very cold, dry, and how can I describe it? But a very cold place that sometimes you can lose all the confidence, you can lose everything about yourself. That's how I can describe Ballyhonest at that time. Yeah, I've never been there because I think if I can go to Ballyhonest, I don't know how it is at the moment, but I think I can break down, and that's one of the things that I protect myself when I know that these things I'm vulnerable. Like I was really, really vulnerable in the time I was in Ballyhonest. I had a depression. I had clinical depression, and I remember I was staying in a room with a woman who had mental issues, and she used to wake up like I had even the recordings of that woman, and she used to wake up like maybe 11 o'clock, and she would start like shouting. It wasn't shouting. She said she believed in God. So, that was her way of relieving her stress. So she was praying like from maybe 11 o'clock till 5 a.m. in the morning. And she'll be just like shouting. And we are in this room. And if you talk to her, she can get a knife on you. And, those are the things that I went through there. And I just don't want to go there. Yeah.
And the kids that are in direct provision, what's available to them? We're talking obviously about sports being a great outlet, like Zach has done amazing things, is there that opportunity for kids in direct provision to get involved in sporting organisations?
I think we really need more and more people to come on board, because we have brilliant kids in direct provision. We have kids who have role models, who they see themselves maybe in the shoes of Zach, who they see themselves in the shoes of, like David Berkham, who they see themselves in the shoes of many other, people who have done well in the societies. But then they don't have that opportunity just to get there. The opportunity is like, how can they start? Even to register a child for a football, even to register some other, like there is a football which is just like something that can get the kids out, like on a day-to-day basis. But then on like a professional level and other stuff, there is many things that it's not there yet. Yeah.
And what about in terms of, I can see exactly why direct provision can have such a negative impact on your mental health. And what kind of support, if any, is available even if you have a clinical diagnosis like that? Was there any assistance or medical intervention?
At that time, I was going to my doctors. That's the only help I had, because the time when I was here, I have to be honest, there was not much, like even just people to come and talk to. Even we didn't even have information that you could go to a therapist, things like that. So like in my time, I started seeing therapists of recently, like maybe moved to Dublin about 2015, 2016. That's when I saw 2014, 2015, 2016. That's when I saw quite a lot of a therapist. But by then we never had. And when even you don't have that information, I don't even know like other people knows how that there a way to go and see a therapist. Because I know like the other place which is see asylum seekers and therapists was Spirasi. So you can understand there's just all Irish Refugee Council and there's Spirasi. And we are 5,000 of us, and I don't think they can just take in all of us. Boom! I think that's impossible. Yeah.
And one other question: I was lucky enough to visit Malawi in 2008.
Yeah.
And song is such a huge part of your culture. That was one of the things I left with everywhere I went. There was music happening.
Yeah.
And we're talking about kind of sports and sporting organisations trying to step in and engage those living in direct provision. But what about other, like the arts and other entities like that? Because sport isn't for everybody. It can be a great outlet for a lot of people, but for those that aren't sporty, what can other organisations do as well, maybe to engage the people, the 5,000 people that are currently living in direct provision in this country?
Like what if say like in arts, like music, football, Gaelic. I know there are a lot of, like my son, I'll give you an example of my son. He's a very good he was a good footballer, but he can't be a footballer now because now he's just 10, 18, he's 17. And I think he can't even do better than he was when he was a young man. I can tell you, like, when my parents were arrived, we had the Manchester player, Roger Federer. Yeah, he visited Malawi at a certain point, and he was one of the kids who walked with him on the pitch. And since that, he really wanted to be a footballer. Unfortunately, my son has been like in a very, very bad situation through our family tragedy, and through that, coming to me, he ended up at a certain point being in prison. Not he committed any crime, but he was on his way coming over here. So he stayed in a prison for a very long time, and that even also damaged his mental capability. And through that, he started making music. He now makes good music, but then there's just no way out. And I know, like, in his group, he helps his friend, like, they have like 5 of them, and they just kind of like play music in a room, and that's what they do. And it's a music that if it goes out there, and these kids, they can be great singers, they can actually create a very good opportunity, like, something that even Ireland can be on a map on, but it just doesn't happen like
that. Ellie, my father's 1991, and last year he's very active. He drives around everywhere. And last year, at age 90, he got a week's respite in an old folks' home. And he drove down there, and the first thing they told him was he couldn't drive out to get his newspaper or whatever. They also told him he couldn't make a cup of tea, and he was making a dinner. But after 5 days of that week, he had to get out of there. So I'm just kind of equating the mental thing of being treated like you can't do anything. So that's a bit like the system. And I'm saying fair play to you for having got over that, because it's pretty tough. My question is this. I think you said you're about 10 years in the system.
8. Yeah.
What 8 years? Why, or what are the blocks? Why does it take so long to get out of that system? Why can't they say yes or no or whatever to you? What's happening? Tell us from your point of view. What's happening?
The system is very complex. Like, first when I was arriving, we are like the old system. The first time I was arriving, your case, once you applied the asylum case, it was taken from 1 to 2 years without even just heard your first your reply, right? So like it takes like from 1 to 2 years just for you to be recognized as a refugee, and then they say you haven't heard anything for 2 years. So after 2 years, maybe you will hear that no, you are not allowed to be a refugee for whatever reason. So people do apply. So when you apply, it takes again also another maybe 3 or 4 years for you to hear that. And I know that the government, they've been saying to people that all these people that you see, they've been refused like a couple of times. In my case, in many cases I know, I'll tell you that there is no facts in there. Another thing is, I think it was just like the way that the people who are keeping asylum seekers, it's a multi-million industry. So people were making money. So maybe that's what I think sometimes, keeping people this long, it multiplied, into these businesses. Maybe that's another thing. I'm not really sure if that it is. But also, there is a weakness with the government that there are cases which are very true and honest cases, but the system does not just allow to believe those cases, and there is a weakness of whereby we've seen people. I'm an asylum seeker, so I'm talking based on experience. I've seen cases that they've been even allowed to give a stay for the people who they don't want to do anything in the country, and they just want to go and claim social welfare. They don't even want to go to work. But the people who are active, like, I'm a very knowledgeable woman, and I've been told like 1,000 times that, you're a very clever woman and you're just taking advantage of the system, and you can work you can work your way around and things like that. That doesn't make me not to be a refugee or an asylum seeker, because even as we are talking of, we've seen presidents of other countries ministers moving on into other countries to seek asylum and to seek refuge based on your life threatening. So things like that. Also, there is just like a bit of shortfalls between the system and how the cases they're being handled. So I can't say much of that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I know Zach mentioned there about playing games, right? Football, hurling, camogie, that there was a great way in the community. Now, I myself pass by Balseskin most days. It's just outside Finglas, and it's the place where a lot of people go the first time they arrive in the country.
Yeah.
But I went in there a few years ago and I asked them, have they got any people who teach in English and stuff like that? But I found I had to make 4 or 5 visits to try and get in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical? Is it part of a system that's trying to keep more people not coming, make it so difficult, or what's going on? I mean, if you could have more, there's no integration there because you're locked away.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was more things happening, is that part of the system, or you said that maybe the companies who are making money of this, or what's going on?
This system, the system is meant to protect you people, like people from the community, the Irish people, to really know what's going on in the country, and also to understand the problems that we have. Because if I'm telling you my story, and if you meet 10 other people, you will find out that although you are not an immigration officer, although you are not somebody from the Ministry of Justice, but I think you can listen to 10 cases that have lived in Ireland for 10 years, that it's making sense to you. Then you can even actually say, like, why is not this person allowed to live in our community? And you can, because you are a normal human being, and actually you can make that assessment, like, this is not right? And that's what the government doesn't want you to see. They want you to see us as people who we come here and we just want to flood the system, or we come here with lies, or we are not actually who we are claiming we are. That's how they want you to see us, and that's what they want you to hear, the way they are manipulating the system. So it's just the way that's a institutional racism.
Has bullying online been an aspect?
Yeah, we did. Unfortunately enough, I've been really lucky that I've been many times on newspapers and TVs, but I don't get much trolls, and I just said thank God. But like there are other, like Jono. Sometimes when I'm invited to go on Jono, I have to sit down and think a lot. Like, do I want to do this? You know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there is a lot of like trolls and.
Yeah. See, I think because there's 5,000 people here, you know, in direct religion, is it? But everything's going to take time. Like, example, my parents were in Iraq. They were refugees for 20 odd years, and they thought every third month or second month, you know, the Iraqi government were promising they're going to give them passports. Yeah. And that, you know, the way. So they would have been happy if they were got an Iraqi passport, so they were part of the country, you know. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. And then the UN was there as well. They were told, look, we'll sort it out for you next year, the year after. So it's the same thing here. Like, you know, at least I know sometimes when I look back over there, they lived in tents and that for about 2-3 years, you know. So they went through a horrible life. But sometimes, like, the way I look at it, I was never there now where you are, but the way I look at it, at least you have a roof over your head for now. Do you get breakfast and lunch and that?
We have different opinions, like people, they have the way they see things, right? So I can't say much on that. Like, I know, like, if I am like here sitting down with your parents, your parents were there and your parents made that decision for you guys to be where you are, right? So I think even if I can sit down with your parents, you know, and I can be talking to her, like, why did you allow yourself to live in a tent for 20 years? She'll give me maybe the same opinion, I can give it to her, because she had to make a decision for you guys to be where you are. I always fight with my son every day, like, on this situation, because my son, he's been like through a tough road, and I think that time he saw like his struggles. And when he moved over here, because I've told you that I've been moved quite a lot, then I was taken into a private accommodation. That's where I live now. So I don't live like where other people live. So I live like in a normal flat with everything in it. And I work so hard for nothing. My son doesn't see that. He sees a mom who goes out. He sees the mom he knew, or the family he knew before we were broken, right? And now, because he's come in a period whereby he didn't experience the transition of us going through the hostels, living from one room to another, living in a one room with I, myself, and 3 different women. He didn't even experience that, and not even experiencing like the €9.60 and the 19.10 16. And sometimes I always find very difficult conversation when I'm like telling you like, don't mess up this. There are actually people in our situation who don't just live like us, you know. So I can understand you to have that opinion. But for me, as a mother, as a woman who have been this transition, if you say that to me, I won't even agree with you like 100%. I'm in Ireland. I'm in one of the most I'm in one of the most advanced country, and under European Union, human rights is the first thing that they have to give to people like me. And if you're talking of Iraq, we know the issues which are in our third world. So maybe we can agree on that, because I'm coming from Malawi and I know how Malawian government can choose to treat its own people. Right? So I'm here in Ireland that at least human rights it's respected. And to find myself in this situation with many other 5,000 people, I've seen women going on prostitution. I've seen worse, that some other things I just have to. There's a lot of baggage in me, but I have to carry it with dignity and with pride and just live this moment. That's what I give it to myself.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. No, just because there's 5,000 people, and sometimes you probably have only 20 people that are looking after 5,000 people, you know, so it's not going to happen overnight. So in my opinion, everything's going to take time, you know, because just say my parents were forced out of Iraq because of the war. They were told to move on or you're getting a bullet, you know, so they had no choice, they had to move. So I'm just saying, similar here, like, and I know, like, the way I'm looking at it, at least you have a roof over your head now at the moment, but I'm sure they're going to sort it out, but everything is going to take time. It's just not going to happen overnight. It's you know what I'm saying? Like, there could be only 20 people working in the immigration or some office that are looking after all the Islam seekers and the immigrants there in the country. Do you know what I mean? And there's 5,000 people, and there could be millions of paperwork. And I don't agree waiting for 8 years either, you know.
Yeah, and I think like many people, we've been so grateful that we have roof over our head, we have food on our plates each day, you know, like. But sometimes I don't think we should undermine mental health issues. You know, like being someone that you are able to go out, to go to the market and get your stuff. I know what it has meant for me to be a volunteer since I've been like to make up this choice of like, let me step up and do what I am doing right now. And I know what I have avoided, the situation that I've seen other people like being depressed or being in this vulnerable situation. So, you know, I can't undermine like people's situation from where I am now, but I just have to say, if it needs be that, I have to be there to help my friends, because I've actually done that. When I was coming, people were staying in direct provision for more than 5 or 10 years without even getting status. And like in 2010, actually the people who got refugee status in Ireland, there were only 4 people out of like all these 5,000 people. But my brother, since I started campaigning, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of asylum seekers getting their statuses. So that's why I say I understand what I'm doing, and I just love this moment.
Ellie, I just speaking on what Zach's saying there, like there's so many different nationalities and so many different religions. It's actually a big demographic, huge demographic that are people living in direct provision. Is there any conflict within the centres from the different religions or different nationalities?
Yeah, we always get different opinions, and that's also some stuff which happen. But you know, like the system is created on a divide and rule. You know, like they are like it's created in a way where people should be divided. You know, at the end of the day, if you're kept in one room for 31 days, and then what's going to happen? You are the one who is making me to be here. You are the one who is making this to look like this. I'm coming from Syria. I've seen bombs. I'm coming from, you know, and people, they'll start like taking their own cases as it's even more better than the other person. So, you know, there's always different opinions, but there's always another way that people will connect really well. Because even this situation has even branded me to have more relations with asylum seekers and refugees than maybe even I had friends before. So it's 50-50.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, it's just because obviously we want to organise an event going forward to try and help this. I personally here, I'd hate for it to be just a flash in the pan that we do this and kind of we do this nice day in Crow Park and it's amazing and people pat each other on the back, but then it doesn't really impact change. Like what you said about Dorina Allen taking you under her wing, and the difference that's made to your life. And as Colin's already said, sport isn't for everyone, so maybe we have to look at it in a different light to say, let's talk about the arts, let's talk about music, let's talk about whatever it may be that can get more people involved in this.
Yeah, you know, like, let me just give you this example. That's one of the greatest examples you've just said about, like, Darina taking me on her wing. We are 5,000 people, and I'm not, like, saying that everyone can get the same, the same treatment I can get. But if you can actually just help one or two people, that actually people, one or two people, can even actually help more than 100 people. That's what I've done, you know. I mean, me and Ronnie, we found ourselves in a certain platform that I think they did. How many people did they interview? Like, I think they said they interviewed over 400 people, but our names were coming like over and over and over again. I lived in direct provision whereby asylum seekers, for them just to come out and to do something, people were so scared. People were afraid to do that. But with the work I've done, I've seen a lot of asylum seekers coming out, even just to volunteer. Not speaking out or not being like behaving badly, but just to volunteer or even try to do something. People, they've been inspired. So it's not all, we are 5,000 people. We can't be in Darina's wing, all of us. You know, Gary can help 2-3 people. You know, Darina did me, and somebody can do somebody. You know, but some of us who we've got this opportunity, we can actually help the rest of our people, and that's what it is. You know, yeah. Everyone cannot be a reader.
I think a lot of people in Ireland don't understand direct provision or what goes on there or the conditions that are involved. So I think it's really important for the likes of yourself to continue telling your story, and it's great. I've really enjoyed it tonight, and to not put up with the standards that's there, and to keep fighting for change. And I'm really happy to hear from you tonight. And thanks very much.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ellie.